Good afternoon. Um, okay, so what I am, what we're going to do today, we're going to go back. We're going to talk about estates a little more because I've started grading the tutorial assignment from a week or two ago, and it's not great, guys. It's not great. Um, so we're going to go through and I've graded about 20% of the class at this point, and so it's a fairly extensive sample, and it's sort of random, and I'm seeing some patterns that are troubling me. And so I've got a list here, and I'm going to take you through the list of sort of the common errors that I see, and sort of explain why they are common errors. And then we're going to sort of wrap it up and call it a day. And we may get through a little early. One of the tutorials today had several questions, and so it sort of ran the whole, more or less the whole time. But that'll be up to you guys, right? We're going to get through my list, and then we're going to talk about what's next. And unless you guys have questions, we'll call it at that point. So these are not in any particular order. These are just sort of as I noticed them, I put them in my notes. And so some of this may not make a whole lot of, like, the order here may not necessarily make a whole lot of sense. But the first thing is nowhere in this assignment at any point is there a conveyance that creates a fee tail. And we can, we're going to talk about sort of what does create a fee tail in a little bit later today, but yeah, that's not on the list of what we were looking for. The second thing is that I think there's a lot of confusion over the difference between children and heirs. Okay. Children are not heirs. Having children doesn't mean that they're your heirs, and not having children doesn't mean that you don't have heirs. Okay, so a conveyance to someone's heirs does not necessarily vest because they have children. Heirs don't exist until somebody dies. Okay, and so if you see a conveyance to someone's heirs, it's really important for you to consider what happens, what the conveyance does if those heirs fail to be defined. Okay, and specifically, right, the way that heirs are not defined is if the future interest vests before the person whose heirs are identified dies, right? And the flip side of that is, right, if there's a conveyance to someone's children, what happens if they die without children? Who gets the property? And that sort of, that leads me into another thing, which is that a lot of you guys miss the shadow grant. Okay, and don't go looking for shadow grant in the text. Don't go looking for it online. This is my term. This is my term. The shadow grant is the retained future interest held by the original grantor if everything in the conveyance fails. Okay, and so if the way that you can identify a shadow grant is if there is a series of events where nobody in the conveyance takes fee simple absolute, there's a shadow grant. The original grantor retains something. Okay. But what do they retain, and how do we describe that? And this, I think, is sort of, this is the problem. There's no example, Christina. This is just an abstract discussion. Do you want me to repeat it again? Okay. Okay. So if you read the conveyance and you sort of parse out what it is doing, and there is a series of events, okay, X, then Y, then Z, where nobody who is named in the conveyance has fee simple absolute, then there must be something at the end that is retained by the original grantor. And the reason for this is that a conveyance, to be valid, has to explain everything that happens to the land until the end of time. And if it doesn't, then that means that there's something that the original grantor did not convey. And if they didn't convey it, they retain it. Okay? So Christina, does this make it more clear? Do you feel better about it now? Okay. Would you tell me if you didn't? Okay. Okay. So moving on. This error, boy, this one really really just leaves me confused. And I will admit, a little bit aggravated. Because what I feel like I'm getting from you guys is a lot of unnecessary stuff. Okay? Like, I don't care what rights a life estate holder has. I'm not asking you about the rights of a life estate holder on this assignment. I don't care about the cases that discuss the the difference between a fee tail and a fee simple, Because that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, what are the interests that are created by this conveyance? And so a lot of answers have really lengthy paragraphs that look really well researched and really, carefully written, and I just don't care on this assignment. You've done all this work and none of it matters. And I hate that for you, and I hate having to grade it. And so here is what I want. Here is what you need to say. Okay? Well, it's very bizarre because on the one hand, Christopher, people are going the extra mile on this assignment, and then on the other hand, I get lots of questions from the same people that basically amount to, what is the bare minimum that I have to do to get the grade that I want in this class? And so, I think that there's room for us to have both of those dynamics, but boy, both of them really just leave me going, ah. So here is what you have to do. Here is how you succeed on this assignment, okay? You say, we have a possessory interest to the holder. And, oh, hang on, I was typing it into the chat, but nothing got typed, and I've got a glare on my screen, so I didn't realize that. All right. Possessory interest to holder. If the present interest creates a future interest, you have to describe it. Future interest to holder. In possessory interest, conditional on if any condition must be met. That's it. That's it. I don't need anything else. Okay. When you give me a whole bunch of text, I have to sit there and read it to see if the right answer is buried in it somewhere. And that slows down the grading and means that you don't get meaningful feedback for a longer time. So just give me the answer. Like, it's not. So I appreciate it, Christopher. And believe me, like, I don't want you guys to think that I'm upset with you, right? Or mad at you. This is just, you're making my life harder and you've made your lives harder. So let's all agree that we're going to be kind to one another and make life easy for one another. Okay. So that's how we're going to describe interests, okay? The other thing that we need to talk about is that future interests are contingent on two things, okay? And I see a lot of answers from you guys that conflate them, right? Treat one as the other, or don't notice both of them. So let me give them to you straight here. The first thing is that the future interest has to come into existence, okay? And the second thing is it has to vest. All right, so let me sort of walk you through the timeline here. We have a possessory interest. Okay. Yeah. If that's misspelled, then whatever. Possessory interest, which creates a future interest. And when that future interest vests, the possessory interest dies and the future interest creates a new possessory interest. And so the cycle continues. Okay? So possessory interest, future interest, possessory interest. And there can only be one of each at the time. So we have a possessory interest that creates a future interest. And then when that future interest vests, it eliminates the old possessory interest and creates a new possessory interest. That new possessory interest creates a new future interest. So hopefully that makes more sense now. So what are these possessory interests? There are 5 of them. Okay, there is the fee simple absolute. There is the life estate. There are the 2 types of defeasible fees. There's the fee simple determinable, and there's the fee simple subject to condition subsequent. And finally, there is the fee tail that we're going to talk more about in a minute, but that we know is not in this assignment. Okay. There are 4 types of future interests. There is the reversion, the remainder, the possibility of reverter, and the right of re-entry. And how do these things connect to one another? What's the relationship between them? Okay, the first step, the first piece of the relationship is that the possessory interest defines the future interest that comes after them, which means that you have to read the conveyance in the order that it is written. Do not put things in order. Do not go and try and remove language from the conveyance. There are specific circumstances under which that happens. We went over those in the tutorial a couple of weeks ago. And most of them are not present, right? They're rare. So you should be aware of them, be on the lookout for them, but don't expect them, okay? So if your possessory interest is fee simple absolute or fee tail, no future interest attaches. These are possessory interests that continue on forever, okay? If the possessory interest is a life estate, the future interest that it creates must be a reversion or a remainder. So if you say to me, Agnes has a life estate and Bob has a possibility of reverter, no, that is incorrect. Okay? Reversions are future interests that go back to the original grantor, and remainders go to third parties. Life estates cannot be inherited, so any comment about a life estate's holder's heirs, not correct, okay? If the possessory interest is a fee simple determinable, the next future interest must be the possibility of reverter. So if you say to me that Agnes has a fee simple determinable and Bob has a reversion, no, okay? Finally, if the possessory interest is the fee simple subject to condition subsequent, the next future interest must be the right of reentry. Must be the right of reentry. Now, fee tail is disfavored. Okay, lots of jurisdictions have abolished it. The ones that have not require precise language. Okay, if the fee tail language is not present, you do not have a fee tail. There are 3 types of fee tail language. I am going to put them in the chat for you. 2A, and the heirs of his body. Of his body. If that is not there, you do not have a fee tail. You have a fee simple. 2A, and the heirs begotten of Betty or Barbara or Bonnie or whatever, right? That is a fee tail, but it specifically excludes lineal heirs from prior or subsequent marriages, right? It says the children of this marriage. Okay. And finally, you can just sort of say, right, it is acceptably precise to say that you should take in fee tail. Okay. Okay. Awful lot of answers that I've gotten tell me that a conveyance 2A for life is in fee simple absolute. Okay. That eliminates the words for life. And as I just said a couple of minutes ago, everything has meaning. You should give every word meaning in your conveyance. Okay. So there are some jurisdictions in the Caribbean where 2A, without any sort of words of limitation, conveys a life estate rather than fee simple. But there is nowhere where 2A for life conveys fee simple. Okay. So 2A for life is a life estate. All right. 2 more things. Couple of students have suggested that some of the conditional grants are void for uncertainty. And I really appreciate that effort, and I think, and especially those who did research and found a 1943 House of Lords case that they wanted to cite, but they've misunderstood the doctrine of uncertainty. And to be perfectly frank, I think so did the House of Lords in the 1943 case that they quoted. Because here's the thing, okay? Uncertainty is when we can't answer the question of whether the condition has been met. Okay, so in tutorials a couple of weeks ago, not in all of them, but in a couple of them, I mentioned the fact that an uncertain conveyance would be 2A so long as they're a good person. Okay, we don't know what it means to be a good person, and so we can't determine whether A is or is not a good person to determine whether their fee simple determinable has determined. Sorry, their fee simple condition subsequent has triggered. Okay. The House of Lords case, and in the last tutorial, they asked me the name of it. I don't remember and I couldn't find it, but I will find it and I will have it in this common errors document that I'm going to share with you guys. But in the House of Lords case in 1943 that folks are relying on, the condition was 2A, so long as they marry a man of Jewish parentage and of the Jewish faith. And the Lord said, well, we don't know what Jewish parentage means. We don't know whether it's one parent or two parents or what. Now, in addition to, I think, being wrong on the doctrine, and the reason that I think it's wrong is the reason why the case is anti-Semitic. This case is that was the other thing. Like, in addition to being wrong, the case is anti-Semitic. And the reason it's wrong is the reason it's anti-Semitic, in that if you asked a Jew, what does it mean to be of Jewish parentage? They could have told you. This is a term that has meaning in this community. And for the House of Lords to simply say, well, we don't know what it means, we can't figure it out, is to deny that that community has any say in its own culture and heritage. So this is why I think the House of Lords is wrong. Like, I think they accurately state the doctrine of uncertainty, but that case is not an example of it. And by holding that it was, I think that the Lords create a lot of confusion. So uncertainty is, can we answer this question? Not what is the answer to this question, can we answer it? And if the answer to that is no, then you have an uncertain condition, and the condition is void. Okay? Last thing, and then we'll take your questions, and if you don't have any or you don't have all of them, we'll wrap up early. A lot of folks want to include a sheet in their description of interests. And let me put that in the chat because it is not spelled like it sounds. A sheet is when property goes to the state or to the crown when there's no one to inherit it. Okay? And I don't know about the Caribbean because this is not a decedent's estates class, and so I have not boned up on that. But in the places that I'm familiar with, a sheet is extremely rare. Extremely rare. So, I would not be looking for it, and neither should you. And I think that some of the confusion with a sheet has to do with the not seeing the shadow grant, right? The retained future interest of the original grantor, and also confusing children and heirs, right? Thinking that no children means no heirs, okay? So this is what I've got. And I really appreciate your attention and all of this. And what I'm going to do is at the end of the week, when I finish grading, I am going to upload, I'm going to continue adding to these common errors documents sort of as I notice things. And when I finish grading, I'm going to upload the common errors to e-learning so that you guys have it and have it handy for your review. And I'm also going to add another assignment where you guys can take another stab at this. Okay? Because the scores are not great. The scores are not great. And it's not that big a deal. I don't think this is going to be a thing that makes or breaks most of you guys. But I would like to give you guys another bite at the apple to try and do this correctly. Okay, so what questions do you have? Going once? Going twice? Okay, and I'm going to let you guys go, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care, and bye.